Hey guys, so today we have an interesting challenge ahead of us that's going to demonstrate and test out several different products. First off, I was thinking about whether or not you could use or how you could use Brusho in conjunction with alcohol-based markers. So I drew up a little illustration on some Strathmore mixed media paper, and I'm going to kind of keep a kiss in that I don't want to use too much Brusho on this. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick the two bottles I think I'm going to use. I've already got a color palette picked out. Now, other than just using the two in a mixed media application, I know I'm going to need to do some masking, and I usually use Frisket, but Frisket has its own problems. So I recently purchased some stamping mask paper off of Amazon from Inkadinkadoo to see if stamp mask paper might work any differently from Frisket. So we're going to take a look at this today. Something else I wanted to do is I recently purchased a swivel X-Acto blade, hoping it'll make some of the intricate cutting a little bit easier. Now, I've been using scissors or a regular X-Acto blade like this for a while, and while they're handy tools, they do make the job a little more difficult. So we're going to be taking a look at this as well. Then I thought, due to the color palette I have in mind, my eye fell upon the twinkling H2Os I bought a while back. And I haven't had a good chance to use them yet, and I haven't done a review on them yet. So hopefully we will explore these as well. Now, twinkling H2Os are a type of watercolor, and I'll get the package open off camera. I'm not going to waste your time with that. Another thing we're going to do today is we're going to, in conjunction with alcohol markers, we're using alcohol spray inks. And I have a video on my channel that if you're interested in this technique, you can watch that. There's a tutorial for how to make your own spray mists and how to use them, especially for illustration. Lastly, we may end up using, I'm pretty sure we'll use to some extent, some FW acrylic inks. We have two iridescent inks, Waterfall Green and White Pearl. And you guys have seen me use White Pearl a lot on this channel, but we also have an opaque one, Turquoise. So I am really excited to get started on this mixed media piece. One of the first things we need to do, though, is swatch our colors. So I'm going to do that, and I'll check in with you guys. Okay, so I've got my colors laid out, and I've got a book to swatch in. And if you guys don't swatch your colors before you start illustrating or rendering stamps or what have you, any reason you're using colorful supplies, please do consider swatching. It's very easy to do, and it'll save you a lot of heartache. Before we dive too far into this, I did want to mention that this image here, if you're interested in working along with me, this image here is now available as a color along with me image. So check the description for more information. I haven't quite decided yet if I want to offer a few color along with me images free or do a big pack of them on Gumroad or what. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. All right, sorry about that detour. All right, guys, so I've got everything swatched out, and I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about my color choices and the brands I'm going to be using, because I'm not just using Copic. I am also using, wait, that's the wrong one. Boop, come on, they're so mixed in. Blick Studio brush markers. I've talked about these a lot on the channel, and I was giving away several of them last month. I'm also using some Ranger markers. They're custom, they're not actually Ranger markers. They are custom Copic markers filled with Ranger inks in some beautiful colors that aren't necessarily available in Copic. Now, there is currently a Copic shortage going on, so it may be difficult for you to find empty Copic markers. So that's just a heads up. Right now, they're the only marker brand I know other than like Montana, which makes empty marker bodies that can accept really a variety of ink. I would love to try putting some water-based inks in the empty Copics and seeing how that handles. But again, we have a shortage right now, so that's not really feasible. But at some point, someday, I'm going to do that. I also have a custom Copic wide, and it's also been filled with Ranger in Sailboat Blue, which is this swatch over here. So I'm going to get started by cutting a mask because I want to do some sprays and a Copic wash on the background. And I am going to use the Inka Dinka Doo stamping paper for that. Now, it comes in a much smaller packet than Frisket does. And that's weird. Oh, okay. So, okay, what they want you to do, and this is actually not big enough for this, which is a shame. I don't know that it comes in anything bigger. So what they really want you to do is they want you to stamp your image on the paper and then on here and then cut out around this. This is not a stamp. This is an original design. So I can't do that. I could pull out my light table and do that, but unfortunately, it's just not big enough. So we're going to have to use Frisket after all. Now this is masking Frisket film made by Graphics. It is popular amongst airbrush artists, and it is also popular as a stencil option. And it is a plastic paper. You guys have seen me use it several times if you're a subscriber. And what I am going to do, what I always do, is I'm going to tape my drawing down using some low-tack washi tape, and then I'm going to tape the paper down. I'm going to trace the image with a Sharpie. I'm going to cut it out, and then I'm going to use rubbing alcohol to remove the Sharpie, because if you don't, when you apply your alcohol marker or alcohol ink on top of it, the Sharpie will reactivate and get everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and get going on that, and I'm going to do it in time lapse. All right, so it's time to cut out our stencil, I guess, our mask, really. And so a trick I learned when I was in undergrad, if you don't have a cutting mat, you can use the chipboard back off of, like, pretty much every pad of paper has a chipboard back. I'm using the back off of a Yupo package. And I'm ready to give this rotary blade a go. I can't tell if I'm having problems or it's having problems because it's not want to spin with me. Twisting the paper sort of helps, but this is not going to be a clean cut. It's sharp enough that for the most part, if I pull the paper, it will cut the paper for me. Now, for those of you who are fortunate enough to have something like a Cricut or a Silhouette or a Brother Scan and Cut, you guys, if you have the line art scanned, you can print and cut your own mats. I mean, your own masks, which would be super handy. This is, however, a little easier on my hand than my normal X-Acto blade. I guess I might as well demonstrate it for you guys since we've got it out. So it comes with this pretty large cap compared to the rest of the body. It has a rubberized grip. The back twists off. That releases the blade in case you need to replace it. So I'm going to finish, oh, and the cap does not post, so you need to keep hold of your cap. I'm going to finish cutting this mask out, and I'll do that in time lapse. And then I'll check back in with you guys. Okay, so I I goofed a little bit on that time lapse. I know you guys only got to see the back half. I wanted you guys to see, though, the sort of difficulties I was having using that swivel blade. And I think getting some more practice with it under my belt, I'll become more proficient with it. I found that it works best to guide the paper around it rather than to guide it around the paper. So that's like the best advice I can offer you guys right now. If I had a silhouette, or a cameo, I would definitely be using that thing, though, to cut my masks, because that would save a lot of time. So if you're an artist or a crafter with access to that machine, that's something to consider. So I'm trimming my mask, not going whole hog, but just cleaning it up a little bit with a pair of scissors that I've sort of dedicated to the task. And one of the tricks I've learned when doing larger pieces like this is to work in stages. So either I would decapitate her for now, or I would, well, I can demonstrate the second option better than I can explain it. So we've got her pretty much trimmed out. Now we have to clean off the Sharpie. That's the word. With rubbing alcohol. That was the other word. So I like to keep my rubbing alcohol in a spritz bottle. It's very handy. It sees a lot of studio use, so that's important. And always, 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 when you're dealing with sharps in your studio, in your craft room, wherever, always take a moment to recap them. Don't just leave them live, because that's how you step on X-Acto blades. And I've got a paper towel. Speaking of that X-Acto blade, I'm pretty sure, I remember it happening. I think it happened to one of my roommates when I was in undergrad for art, because I'm pretty sure if I stepped on an X-Acto blade, I would never forget that. So, and you want to be careful, because the water or the dampness, the moisture in the rubbing alcohol will soak into your paper and will make it want to separate from your masking frisket. So you don't want to oversaturate it. You really just want enough to be able to get that marker off. And for those of you who hear my Skype announcements and it like tricks you, you think it's yours, it happens to me too when I'm editing when I'm writing like cards and annotations for the video. I always rewatch it, and it freaks me out too. I'm like, oh, I apologize for when they go off. Sometimes I turn my Skype off, sometimes I forget. So we've got pretty much all of the Sharpie off of that. Might as well go ahead and give my workstation a bit of a clean. I've been messing around with acrylic inks lately. So now we have our piece, and I'm going to tape it down just so it doesn't wiggle out from under me. And you want to tape it in the area that you're not masking, because you don't want the tape to get in the way. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and remove I hate doing this on camera because it always takes me. There we go, I got it. What I want to do is, I have found that this technique works really well for me. Instead of removing the whole backing, I want to leave sections of the backing in place so that in case they get laid down wrong, I can realign that section without having to try to pull up the hole. Nuts! It cut. That's going to be a problem, because that's going to be a point of weakness. So I will have to remove this and set it aside, because that's her arm, and that's important. What you really want to remove is not you don't want to cut the frisket, you want to cut the masking, the paper. That's what you want to cut. And then you want to carefully line it up and apply it. It's one of the things that seems nice. I haven't had a chance to try it out yet because it's the wrong size. But that's one of the things that seems like it would be nice about Inkadinkadoo's stamp mask. And I really, really want to get all of the air bubbles out. So this is not entirely properly lined up. And it can be hard with these slightly larger images. But what I would like to see from masking papers is like a hint of color so that I can do a better job aligning. Because when it's transparent like this, it can be really hard to see. Okay. So you want to burnish it around the edges, and especially if you have a cut like I do here, liquid is going to soak under that. So we're going to have to make a Band-Aid, basically. This has happened to me before. It happened to me in the first rendering skin tones video I did with Naomi. Some blue got into her skin, which was fine because she's dark skinned and I was able to fix that. But if she'd been pale, there would have been no covering that blue up. All right, there is slight bit of overlap there. We'll revisit that in a minute. So I need to apply the head, which should be a lot easier since the body is fairly well aligned. The only hard part is her hair's got all those little spikes kind of thing going on. And there's a bubble. Burnish that down really good. In fact, burnish around her head really good. Because you don't want alcohol ink to be able to be soaked in underneath. Because that kind of defeats the point of masking. You can even use, should have mentioned this, you can use one of your markers to sort of burnish this down. Make sure the paper and the masking area get good contact. All right, I'll be right back because I'll show you guys how to make a little Band-Aid. So we're going to take a scrap of the masking and pretty much do the same thing if you want an exact fit. If you don't care about an exact fit, you don't have to do this. I am looking for my Sharpie, which seems to have gotten misplaced. So I will return when I find the Sharpie. Why do these things always disappear? All right, got it. So you're going to trace the area that needs the Band-Aid. Cut it out and then wash it down with rubbing alcohol. And I'm just going to use scissors to cut it out. All right, remove that backing and then line up and place. And hopefully that will help prevent alcohol from getting in. Oh, I did it in the wrong place. Oh, I'm dumb. Nah, not really. Don't say things like that about yourselves, kids. Let's do it again. That's one of the reasons why it would be hugely beneficial if this stuff had a color to it, because then I could see where I applied it. See, it's up right there. cut it out and wash it off. Still some damp in there. And then reapply. Another reason why it would be nice if it had a tint to it is you could see it when you're removing the backing. Other things that would be nice. I wish the adhesive wasn't water soluble because it gets sticky and gummy and awful if you add water to it. Oh, that's underneath. I want to pick at that. All right, so here comes the fun part. We are going to want to adhere this to the tabletop, not permanently, just long enough to, just so that it'll stay in place. And I actually have another new toy I wanted to try, Tombo's Mono Removable Adhesive. I've never tried it. Doing it the wrong way. Maybe still doing it the wrong way. How do you work? Oh, that's not, okay, that's meant to be up. And this way? Yep, this way. Oh, you can see the cat hair is lovely. And I'm going to assume, because I haven't tried it yet, that you can use a masking fluid eraser to pick this stuff up. Okay, so we've got our removable adhesive. Yet another goodie that's marketed to crafters that artists would love, but nobody thinks to market to us. And now we're going to go ahead and lay down a blue wash. And the masking should make it fairly easy. And Sailboat Blue is a really nice blue. I'm not worried about it being perfect. I'm just trying to get it going. And from the other direction. And you can see where the mask should have been and isn't, and where it went over. And maybe a third. And I'm not worried about getting it on my nonstick sheet because this is going to come right up with rubbing alcohol. And then we're going to go ahead and I think we're going to use some of the rubbing alcohol I just used earlier to sort of lighten some areas. And you don't want to oversaturate this again because it will pool up underneath your masking. It will also reactivate the rubbing out the alcohol marker that's on your mask. So if you wanted to try, like painting with it, or even dabbing some paper into it to pick up that texture, you could. And I'm going to let that dry and then check back in with you guys. Okay, so my rubbing alcohol has evaporated. So now it's time to apply some of my other colors. And I've got Stream, Pool, Pinata's Baja Blue, and I have a video about that one, and Indigo all lined up. So I think I want to start with Baja Blue. Now, for those of you who don't know, Pinata also makes alcohol inks. Ooh, wow, it really like spurts, doesn't it? just getting all over everything. Awesome. Pinata also makes alcohol inks, and let that dry a little before I add too much. And they're a little bit more affordable than the Ranger inks. They're a little harder to find too. I found some open stock at Cheap Joe's, but you can also find them on Amazon. Let's go with indigo. Yeah, see, that comes out a lot less of that. Ooh, wish there was a way to adjust these cheap nozzles. See why it's so important now to mask this off? A little bit of stream. Hopefully this won't soak in under. It's a little finer than I was hoping. I was hoping for more of a splatter effect. I haven't quite yet found a good splatter option. And go and just a little. Wow, you see how it really affects the plastic? Isn't that so cool? I bet that would also really affect, like if you were doing like glossy photo paper, for example. So we need to let that dry. And I love how vibrant the colors are on the mask. It's a shame that's not the, you know, like we're not getting that effect on the paper. It would look great. It's looking good so far. I think we need a little indigo at top. I wish it didn't give such a concentrated spray. Look, I got myself. Because it's like, bam, right there. All right, so time to let that dry and get things cleaned up. So we've got a pretty big mess here, right? This is really easy to handle. First, we want to move our piece out of the way. And then we're going to need some rubbing alcohol. And you can reactivate this and then dip paper into it. In fact, why don't we try that for a cool effect? And this is just alcohol ink, hence why rubbing alcohol is going to work on it. Come on, you. Ooh, look at that. That's neat, isn't that? I mean, since we did spray so much alcohol ink down, it'd be a shame for it to get wasted. Let's spray some more. That's pretty. And then maybe over here. And this works because the surface I'm using is silicone coated non-stick craft mat. So that means it won't soak in. It might stain a little, but it won't soak in. And I can reactivate my ink and pick it up so it doesn't all end up in a paper towel. Now, I'm not a card maker. I'm not a crafty person in that regard. I am an illustrator and a comic artist. So, what I use these for would not be for card backgrounds, although that would be really cool. I can use them, though, in cut paper illustrations. I can use them in digital illustrations for a organic kind of look, a more traditional media sort of effect. I'm going to actually grab more paper so I can really make use of this. So this is basically what we were able to get by just spritzing down the surface and picking up some of that excess alcohol ink. And I'll be saving these for later. But it's not the only way to clean up alcohol ink. You can also apply it to a paper towel and wipe it down. And this works for non-porous surfaces only. Porous surfaces, you might want to put something down first. You're probably never going to get this out of your anything that's cloth. So we have another couple of problems. One, we've got some splatter on some of my markers, which that's not a good thing. That can't stay that way. And we also have a lot of fallout on one of my Copic wides. Now, we're going to end up losing the lettering on there. I'm going to have to rewrite that, but the blue will come off no problem. And the real reason why this is a problem is because this is not the correct shade that's inside the barrel. And I do try to keep these things as accurate as I can, because I do use the cap. I have so many that I do use the caps as a guide before I swatch. So let's clean that off. And if you really hate it, you can soak, I wouldn't soak the whole thing, but you can definitely do a way better job than I'm doing cleaning. I'm cleaning for camera. So after the rubbing alcohol dries from the body, you can reapply with a Sharpie marker. Super easy. And I'm going to have to redo pool as well. All right, so now we have a different thing to consider, a different issue. We have a nice clean surface. We could give it another spray if we really wanted to darken up some of those colors, but I feel like it's dark enough. So now is when I want to pull out my acrylic inks, and these are going to make a big mess too. I think almost everything I do today is going to make a big mess. And you're going to want a synthetic brush. And the reason you're going to do that, I've demonstrated this technique before, is we're going to be tapping the acrylic ink around. So you're also going to need a glass of water. Now I'm going to go grab that and I'll be right back. Got that clean glass of water. So I think I want to start with Waterfall Green. I'm going to dip my synthetic in and then dip it in my acrylic and just tap it gently, and it'll do a splatter effect. Don't want the background to be too busy, because the interior of her dress is actually going to be very busy. So this is gonna get everywhere. Like, it's on my arm. A lot of fallout. Let's clean out the brush and switch over now to turquoise. This needs a good shake. Dip it in. And you can get acrylic off your nonstick craft mat. It just takes some scrubbing. All right, clean that out. Finally, we're going to go over to white. Dip that. And I actually want there to be some mingling of the colors included. That's why I'm working wet into wet. If you want if you work wet over dry, you won't get mingling of the colors. Like, they won't blend together. They'll sit on top of each other. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. All right. Now, I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll decide whether or not we want to do any more layers, or if it's time to remove the masking frisket. All right, so our acrylic is mostly dry, and that means it's time to remove the frisket. And I'm going to use that removable tape to my advantage to hold it in place for me. So far, looking so good. And see, this is why we use frisket. And see what happens. Let me pull that in actually. See, we got a little bit of bleeding underneath, even though we put a Band-Aid on and there was some overlap, but it wasn't as bad as it has been for me in the past, believe me. And that is fairly easy to cover up. Now something, getting it all over my hands. Something I regret not doing is I wish I'd done an overall very light wash of a blue-green to sort of set the tone. I do have a few areas where it's soaked through, but they're really not bad at all. Oh, I should remove the camera. All right. All right, pretty good. Looks like space would be perfect for space, actually, probably. So, we could try to remove the removable adhesive off the back. Don't know how well that's gonna go. Seems like it'll like just roll off, which is why I think the masking fluid eraser will probably work on this. Do that later. Okay, so the next step in this is to actually start laying down some color. And to do that, I want to clean up my environment a little bit because it's getting a little bit tight. So I'm going to do that and I'll see you guys in a minute. So while this isn't intended to be a rendering tutorial, I do have those on my channel. So, you know, you can check those out. I do want to talk about a couple things first. I will be putting down some Brusho. That's the point of this, is to explore Brusho used in a mixed media situation with alcohol markers. I will be using some Brusho. So I do want to, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and fill in the part of her dress that's going to be utilizing Brusho because I don't want it going straight down on white paper. While that would be a more striking effect, I think the best result is going to be if I go ahead and render the fabric first, put some shading in, etc., and then apply the Brusho later so they look sort of like they belong together. Because when I do mixed media, I don't want it to be like, oh, this is obviously such and such. I want it to look, you know, like everything has been thought out and worked into a whole. And the part I'm going to color with Brusho is this turquoise part that I am putting some alcohol marker down on. And I'm starting with BG15, which is aqua. And I'm not even being particularly precise because the Brusho is going to add such a random effect to the area that it's going to be less obvious if there's streaks. So I'm going to go ahead and finish coloring in this area, and I'm going to do that in time lapse. right, so we've got the basis down for the turquoise in her dress, and I did that using Aqua and Mermaid. Mermaid was a self-filled marker using Ranger Mermaid blue, green alcohol ink. So next I am going to render her skin. And if you're interested in how I render skin, there are plenty of other videos in my channel where you can find that out. So I'm going to work on her skin in time lapse. And I will see you guys. Actually, what I would like to do is I did talk about wanting to add like some tone to sort of influence color. So I think I will go ahead and knock in, I might regret doing this, knock in some aqua blue undershadows. We'll see how that works. Hopefully it won't be too regrettable. And I'm not trying to be heavy-handed with it at all. I really just want it to be furthest away from the light. All right, so after this dries, I'm going to go ahead and move on with my skin tones. I want to show you guys something. Even though, it's going to cast a shadow. Even though we were careful and used a mask, we still got some smearing with some of the blue. It's not a big deal. Fortunately, it's not on her face. That tends to be the hardest area to fix. I just wanted to point out to you because it is something you need to be really careful about. You need to clean your nibs as regularly as possible to prevent this kind of thing from happening. So I want to take a moment to talk to you guys about black markers. Not all black markers are created equal, and I usually stay away from using a straight black marker. Let's grab one since we're talking about. Let's grab two actually. So special black is a little bit different. Let's see. All right. So we've got a Copic black and we've got Prismacolor black, and these are just plain black markers. Let's go ahead and swatch them so you guys can see what they look like. So regular black 100 is just sort of a blue black. And how does it look when we try to blend it? Yeah, it's blue black. Not anything super exciting. Prismacolors is a little bit darker than Copic's. It's hard to see because they both look like black. And it blends out to more of like a lamp black, but sometimes you'll get hints of blue in there. Now, I want her dress to be, the cover on her dress to be black. And I have a few options. I could use Special Black, which is a little bit of a browner black. But I think I'm going to use Blick Studios Warm Black, which looks like this. Copic's Warm Gray 10, which looks like this. And Ranger's Pitch Black in a custom marker. I might end with Special Black. So, because these are black markers, this is going to get really dark really fast. We may end up adding highlights back in later with pencil color, but it's still going to get dark fast. So I'm starting with warm black, and I'm just doing kind of a color fill. Like, I'm not super concerned if it's streaky because I am going to go over it. I really just want to fill the area and see how the color looks once it's all down. And warm black is definitely a purplish or even a purple brown sort of black. And it is great if I actually prefer using like the warm grays or the blue cool grays from Copic rather than blacks, just because they tend to have a tone to them, which works so much better with what you're doing overall. And since most of this piece is very cool, I thought a warm black might add a little bit of contrast. So that's why I went towards warmer black colors. Or warmer black tones. I mean, black is supposed to be like the absence of all color, so don't tone, hue, shade, are those applicable to black? I don't know. And something else I wanted to point out is that just like with denim, I'm getting a lot of blue smudge if I run my hand over the area. It's a little bit frustrating because alcohol markers aren't supposed to pick up onto your hand, but I will roll with it. I assume it's just staining and it's not actually smearing. That's the first layer down, and you guys can see, and it looks even lighter for y'all, you can see that it's really not too dark. It's not too black. It's not all that overwhelming as it dries. So I'm going to go in and do another layer. It's time for the part we are both actually waiting for. It's time to clear the workspace and get out the Brusho. So we're going to do the same thing we did earlier. We're going to gently tape the paper down so it doesn't smear all over the place. And then we're going to take our Frisket down. And we're basically only cutting out the green. So that's all we're going to need to trace. So it really doesn't take up a whole lot of space. If you want to, oh wait, no. The green is the part we want to keep. So we're going to need a trace of the outline, and then we're going to need to cut out the green. I'm sorry, I wasn't quite thinking. So we want to utilize these quarters since they are already cut for us. That saves some work. And in fact, oh well, I don't want to do it on my mat because I don't want to cut my mat, but I was going to say we could just go ahead and cut it, but I don't want to ruin this. So here is the handy dandy trusty dusty Sharpie, and I'm going to do the outline first because that's the easiest pretty much. And then, oh, it's going to be hard to see. For some reason, the black and the green just don't have enough contrast. You wouldn't think that would be an issue. Anyway, like I said, the only part we're cutting out is the green. So the only part we're going to need, oh, okay, that works. Are going to be these little green islands. It's hard as heck for me to see this. I don't know why. This ought to be a contrast test. And if you're like me and you're prone to forgetting what you need and what you don't need, you can mark the areas that need to be cut with something. You could do a C. I do X. That's just sort of generic shorthand for a black fill, actually. But I think I will remember what it means for this. I don't know why it's so hard to see. Maybe seriously doubt it. Try turning on my light table, see if that helps any. Anyway, I'm going to finish designating the area that I need to cut, and then we'll cut it. All right, so I've got my areas designated, and the big ones are all marked with an X. So I'm going to pick this up again and gently remove the washi tape. And pull out that Yupo pad and get to work. So I am going to cut around and then we need to cut the pieces that would be green. I'm going to go ahead and use my swivel knife. So I'm actually having a lot of problems with this little finicky bodice bit. So what I'm gonna do is I hate doing this because it opens up weak points, but I'm going to go ahead and trim this off and then apply it separately because it seems to be getting kind of stretched out of shape. And being an artist or being a creator is really all about having to find solutions or make solutions that work for you, being able to quickly come up with a plan B. And that takes practice. Like, that's not something we are resourceful little monkeys, but this is something that most humans are a little adverse to. I mean, it's effort and it's hard, but oh, see, that got stuck. It can be a lot of fun, and the more you do it, the easier it is, and it's good for your brain for you to have to come up with interesting solutions to puzzles. So rather than play video games, I just review art supplies and do tutorials online. And sometimes my experiment works and sometimes it does not. And sometimes learning to roll with the punches. All right, this is gonna come up. I'm afraid of how this is gonna come up. But learning to roll with the punches is not something I am not good about change. So these sort of exercises are good because they force me out of my comfort zone and they force me to do things I would not necessarily otherwise do. And it also often opens my eyes to things I would not have necessarily tried. So I don't want to use that. Let's see if I can get it to come. Dang. How come you're so quick to come up when I'm applying something to you, but when I have scored you and I want you to come up, you don't want to come up? There we go. Just sort of trimming some of the areas since I can. Oh yeah, I need to apply that finicky little bodice. I had double of a time trying to see this. Ugh. Oh, and it tore. Come on, you. I don't want to have to redo you. I'm sorry if my head gets all up in the shot. This is really hard to see. I need to get some tweezers for my desk. That might help with stuff like this. There. That was surely worth the price of admission, watching me struggle for 5 minutes with something that should have been pretty simple. And we have a breakage up there where it's going to sink through. So, stupid, I'm cutting on my craft mat, and I shouldn't be doing that. I'm cutting a tiny band-aid. Hopefully that'll work. All right, time for some burnishing. And burnishing just means you're sort of buffering down the edge of the frisket so that there's a seal and water or alcohol won't seep through that and stain the other areas. So I'm going to burnish this and I'll get back to you guys. All right, so that's buffed down. We're finally at a place where we can make some progress. And I have 3 colors of Brusho. I have white, turquoise, and blue. And there's a few ways you can use Brusho. You can saturate the paper beforehand and then sprinkle it onto your surface, or you can sprinkle it first and then spray. So I'm going to sprinkle it, and Brusho is very fine. So even if it doesn't look like you got a lot, you want to start fine and build it up. You can see it reacting on the plastic. And I don't want to oversaturate this because I really didn't get a very good seal in some areas. And I've had problems with Brusho and masking fluid before because it doesn't evaporate immediately. So there's plenty of time for it to soak up underneath. In fact, what I might do, what I'm going to do, is I'm going to grab a paper towel and just sort of absorb. You can see where it's soaking in on the skin over there because there's lots of areas for that to happen. Should have been a little quicker. Just want to soak up the excess water. It's not really so much about the Brusho, it's about the water. Now, if you want to kind of control it with a paintbrush, you definitely can do that too. This one's being a pain in the tuchus. Okay, let's do some Prussian blue. Want to have kind of a light hand. Now, I'm going to have to let this dry because I really don't want it soaking in too much under the frisket. The frisket doesn't really do a good job when there's lots of water pooled on top of it or pooled next to it. In fact, I'm going to have to delicately dab. See, her bodice is just about giving up. So I may have to go back over that. But I'm going to delicately dab certain areas. Her skin has also... So one of the big complaints right now for me with Brusho in a mixed media application like this is there just isn't anything really good for masking because pretty much everything that's available has some detrimental effects. Frisket, there is leakage problems. Masking fluid, which is what I would have used on the bodice, masking fluid for me tends to tear up the paper no matter how careful I am. I just always have really bad experiences with it, so it makes me hesitant to use it. That's gonna go everywhere. And that's another thing is Brusho is super, it's dye based and it's super fine. So when it starts getting everywhere, it's really hard to clean all of it up. I'm gonna go ahead and use some of that Brusho just like I use some of that ink with some watercolor cardstock and just, it's not cardstock, just watercolor paper. Soak some of that up. And I'm gonna step away while this dries because I have a tendency to overwork things. So I'll be back. Okay, so the paper is still pretty damp. It's not at all what you would call dry. And I'm probably gonna wreck this, but I'm wanting to add some white Brusho because there isn't really a good application for it. And if this doesn't work the way I want it to, I may just splatter some white on here since we've got the mask on anyway. All right, bring out that old untrusty water bottle. You know, just squirt it like a billion times, trying to hit one spot. Yeah, that white's pretty unimpressive, isn't it? Let's try shaking some more. It looks really good on like black paper, but it's just not cutting it here. See, it gets blasted into basically oblivion. Actually, mixed media paper might just not be a very good paper for Brusho. It's supposed to be mixed media, so you should be able to use a variety of things on it, but sometimes I come across something that just doesn't like it, and it seems like Brusho might be it, because there aren't any like neat little nooks and crannies in mixed media paper. It's pretty much flat. And Brusho does like to settle into nooks and crannies. So before this thing gets even more out of hand, I'm gonna sort of daub up some of the excess water where I can, where it's feasible. I'm gonna have to fix that neck so much. It's like a bad fungus has crept up onto her neck. And I guess I'll go ahead and pull out the tools I need for splatter. All right, I grabbed what I need. Of course, doing it like this means it's gonna sort of blend into the background, so we're gonna have to do something about that a little later. All right, now to let all this dry, and that means walking away. So because I am impatient, I really want to know how bad the damage is, I'm going to start removing the frisket. Especially because if you leave frisket on too long, it leaves a nice layer of adhesive, which is not something we want. So I'm going to be fairly careful because there are patches that are still wet. So far, it looks like her neck really got the worst of it. Everything else seems to be manageable, so that's good. It's that neck I'm really concerned about because it's at the point where I'm going to have to do some drastic triage to fix it. It will never look like this didn't happen. But you know, that's fun in its own way sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes, is figuring out how to salvage something. And if any of my fellow artists or creators out there can point out what I'm doing wrong with the frisket, other than don't use it with watercolors, which I figure that, oh gross, it left a lot of gum on the paper too. That's so disappointing. Other than don't use it with watercolor, I would love to hear it because clearly I'm having some trouble. So I'm going to start attempting corrections on her neck. And since the color damage is so bad, I'm going to have to use opaque white, which does not make me happy. Not that I don't like opaque white, but the problem with opaque white is once you have put it down, you can't really put color on top of it. I am going to try, though. It's going to be a day of experimentation and possibly tears. So that's what that first layer looks like. Not great. Not the best touch-up job. Because I really don't want it to be the most noticeable thing on the page. Problem is the color underneath is blue. That's always a hard color to cover up. So we'll let that disaster dry and see what we can do with that. Might not be able to do anything. You can definitely see the white though, like it stands out so much. All right. All right, guys, time to possibly dance with disaster. I am going to attempt to color over some of this Copic opaque white. It's fine if it doesn't end up the same color. It just needs to not be white. With some of the colors I use for skin tones. And as you can see, I am wrecking my nib because it's picking it up. So I'm going to have to clean this nib as I work. Or possibly just sacrifice it to the art guy. Oh, shoot. See that? I don't think that's going to work. Now, that could mean this just isn't fully dry. It hasn't actually been all that long. So I will step away, I suppose, because this is a water-based product, so it shouldn't become reactivated by alcohol. They shouldn't necessarily interfere with each other, which is why I was thinking I could color over it with this. But it hasn't dried long enough. It does look like it's at least picking up some of the color, so that tells me that at least we can get some of it sort of matching the rest instead of the stark white. So I'm going to step away again and let it dry some more. All right, let's try again at coloring this opaque white. It's going down a little bit easier now that it's had a chance to dry, and it is not picking up nearly as much. So that was definitely the problem. Now we're not getting nearly as much color saturation as we were getting when it was just paper, but honestly, this is an improvement over the alternative. So if you're patient, you can color over Copic opaque white. And it takes a few layers, but it seems like we might be getting to the skin tone again. And you can still see some errors in there. Like, let me zoom in. Right here, you can see where it was kind of thin. So lest I overwork that into a different disaster, let's go ahead and go in with a darker color. Now, all that's really left is minor corrections and maybe going over the line art in some places. This isn't really a precise technique. It's more of a, you sort of eyeball it and see what works. Using the Copic white in its intended form as a white correctional tool. Although now we know that if we have to, and we're very patient, we can color over our opaque white. All right, so we are pretty much as done as we're going to be with this piece, other than removing the removable tape on the back, and that seems pretty easy. It seems like you just run your finger repeatedly and it cleans right off. So that's neat. I always enjoy it when a craft product works really, really well, and Tombow makes some really good craft products. So we talked about several products today. I think I'm going to go over them all in depth. So regarding the Frisket, it worked really well when applying the alcohol marker wash with the custom wide I made using Ranger's Sailboat Blue, and it also worked really well with my little spray inks. They didn't soak under too bad, but when I tried to use them with watercolors, that was when the real problem started to surface. The water soaks right under the Frisket and makes the adhesive very tacky, so there's still adhesive, unfortunately, on my piece, and I had to do a lot of correcting. I did, however, learn that Copic Opaque White, with some patience, when fully allowed to dry, you can work the area back into something that's less noticeable. It does look like there were some corrections there, but it is not nearly as bad as it was, so I'm pretty pleased with that. I also enjoyed getting to put some of my custom-made markers to the test and seeing how they perform. For those of you who are curious, they will always put down color that's a little bit darker than if you just drip the alcohol onto there, or if you spray the well, the spray is it can go either way, really. Speaking of the spray, I used a new one, Indigo, and these cheap little spray bottles, they focus the spray a little more than I would like, but if you're not quite ready to invest in a Copic airbrush system, these are a great, very affordable solution. You just need to have alcohol inks handy, and if you regularly use markers and refill markers, you will have some alcohol inks handy, and if you don't have them handy, I highly recommend you pick up a few of the Jacquard Pinata inks. These are very inexpensive. Or the Ranger alcohol inks. These cost a little bit more if you can find them, because they will work with this sort of application. Oh, let's see, what else? Oh, the Brusho. So, really, honestly, for the effect I got, it isn't really any more impressive than what I could achieve using the sprays in the background. Now, Brusho is a dye-based watercolor medium, and I used alcohol-based inks, which are also dye-based but have a different solvent, for the background. The Brusho is fun to play with, but you'll get it all over the place. I'm sure I'll be cleaning it up for the next week. The spray inks are also pretty messy, so I'll probably be cleaning those up for the next week as well. Now, using the swivel head cutting knife, it has a teeny tiny little blade on it, and it is a lot different from anything I'm really used to. The way I found that worked best was dragging, like moving the paper around the blade, which definitely takes some getting used to, and I'm going to Google around to see how other creators, artists, and crafters make this tool work for them. Let's see. Was there anything else? We talked about the Tombow, the removable adhesive. Fellow artists, I think this is a really handy asset to have in your studio, especially because you can actually remove, it doesn't just mean removable from whatever surface you've applied it, like removable double stick tape. It also means you can very easily remove it from the back of your piece without, and there's no damage to the piece at all. And this is very easy. I'm just dragging my finger across. You could probably use a masking fluid eraser to do the same thing. So I think we have talked about just about everything. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below, or you can email me. You can find my email address or a handy contact form on my blog, natosoup.blogspot.com, along with lots of reviews and lots of tutorials to check out. And if you enjoyed this video, I recommend you, if you haven't yet, subscribe. I do this sort of content regularly. I enjoy exploring new techniques and sharing them with you guys. I'm sort of possibly the current halfway point between crafter / stamper, card maker, and artist. I investigate all sorts of supplies that run the gamut from hobbyist and student grade, like my Walmart art supply review series, which is up on the blog, to professional grade, like reviewing Winsor & Newton new pigment markers a few months ago. So there is something for everyone who has a bit of an art interest, and I have lots of tutorials up as well, including my Intro to Comic Craft series, which many of you may find interesting. If you really like this video, I would really appreciate it if you went ahead and you shared it to your social networks, because you doing that helps me build my audience, helps me build up a community. It's a huge favor for me. I would really appreciate it. The third way you can help me out is by financially helping me out, becoming a backer on Patreon. I do make money from ads on some of these videos. I don't put ads on all of my videos. But it's not really a lot of money, and it doesn't really cover the cost of the supplies I'm reviewing. So you backing my Patreon, if you enjoy this content and you'd like to see more of it, if you'd like to help fund more of it, would be a fantastic way to ensure that I can afford to keep making videos for you guys. So I'm just going to continue removing this tape. It is really easy to remove. I just put a lot of it on. Because it is kind of low tack, and it picked up some gunk from the tabletop, so I did need to reapply, but that's not really a big issue. But I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys good evening. I hope, if it's not evening where you are, I hope you have a good day. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Becca Hilburn from Natosoup Studio. Goodbye.